Shri Ashnavi Vaishnav, the Honorable Minister for Railways, Communications and Electronics and Information Technology of the Government of India, various officials from the Government of India, Mr. Sanjeev Bajaj, the President Designate of CII, Janmajaya Sinha, the Chairman of the BCG, MR, a close friend again from the Indian diaspora from the United States, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen. First of all, apologies for starting this session a little late. The subject is so much to the heart of everyone present here and outside that we got a little carried away in the previous session. We went a little longer than was scheduled, and we had another very honorable minister giving us her perspectives, and the discussion went on a little longer than what we thought, and my apologies therefore to Shri Ashnavi Vaishnav, someone who is always on time for every program that he has come, for every meeting that he has come for CII in the past, and we apologize to you, Honorable Minister, for being a little late for this. A very warm welcome to this again to all of you and to the Honorable Minister, Shri Ashnavi Vaishnavji, for being present here once again today. Mr. Minister, during your interaction with the CII in the recent past, you had pointed out, you really talked about the vision for developing a user-centric, trust-based regime for new tech entrepreneurship. And I remember when you were speaking, we noted that, and you had also outlined the vision for the electronics manufacturing sector to reach 50 billion by 2026. And we had there since then started a process of working with the industry and with your ministry and with yourself in seeing how we realize some of those very important milestones that you had said. In another session that you had with us, and that was also being participated by global audience, you reiterated the impact of large tech organizations on society and democracy, and this was relevant at a time when digital technology has been emerging as a critical challenge as well as an important growth driver for the world. And your address today once again would, I'm sure, set the basis for a very strong and a close partnership between the government and industry as we work together for India at 100 from where we are today, India at 75. That's our, and this is ongoing, the Amrit Kal. Honorable Minister, I'd like to take up this opportunity to very briefly recapitulate that CII's work under the India at 75 banner, and we started this work 15 years back. But at that point in time, we were just discussing in the last session, we had met the Honorable Chief Minister, who is now the Honorable Prime Minister of our country, and we talked about India at 75. And at that point in time, we also had present with him one of the best Indian thinkers, if I can say, who was a Professor C.K. Prahlad, who gave us the idea as to how to take forward. And we had a long meeting with the Honorable Chief Minister at that point in time. And he said that we will get all of this done. Let me move to Delhi and we will take this forward. And since that meeting, which is really a history today, and great things have happened in terms of how we have been able to work with multi-stakeholders across the country in seeing we realize a vision for just not India at 75, but much beyond. Many areas of work, many elements have come in, and I do not wish to go into the details, but one of the areas that I would like to bring to the Honorable Minister's notice is the functional literacy program, FLIP, of India's, and this was a program which we worked on from the India at 75 Foundation, and this is something which we felt was going to be extremely critical. But there are many other things which has been developed, as for example, the smart cities, we talked about that, planned urbanization, Atal Mission for Rejuvenation under Urban Transformation, the Amrut Plan, and various other programs which looked at certain points in time simple, but gave us phenomenal collaborative touch points, as well as also opportunities for business to contribute and work, be it on the skills mission, be it on Swachh Bharat, be it on so many other programs. Honorable Minister, to you, I would just like to say also that technology-fueled growth, it really gives us a phenomenal opportunity for India, especially for the unorganized sector. However, this group has little or no knowledge, if one can say, of how to leverage digitalization for economic, social, and physical well-being. Hence, through the FLIP program, which I referred earlier, for which of India at 75 Foundation, we are helping workers from the unorganized sectors to use the digital services and opportunities to lead better lives. And we have developed 90 hours digitized content in Hindi that is providing information on basic digital and financial literacy, with some very important and very strong focus on government schemes. And our target is to achieve 1 million beneficiaries by August 2022. And India at 75 Foundation of ours is undertaking this initiative jointly with the HDFC Bank. I said this because from your previous addresses to us and in our interaction, this is a point that we had picked up very strongly, and we have taken this forward, and we would seek your guidance and support for scaling up this particular program, given the centrality of digital technology today. We believe that this would be foundation of India at 100, and under your leadership, your guidance, industry can sincerely work with the government to meet the potential of becoming a strong global leader. Again, Honorable Minister, thank you for being with us once again today, and we look forward to listening to you as to your vision as to how Indian industry can collaborate and work with the government, and under your leadership, your various ministries that you are handling, to realize an India at 100 as we move from India at 75. With that, once again, a very warm welcome to you, Honorable Minister, to this audience of which is primarily industry here today, and listen to you. We have kept this format of this particular session to be a little bit of conversation. So I'll end there, and thank you once again. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, also for being present here on a Saturday afternoon. Thank you. May I now request Sanjeev Bajaj, the President Designate of CII, to please give his remarks.
Honorable Minister Vaishnavji, guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here as President Designate of CII and also as trustee of the India at 75 Foundation, which over the last 15 years has been working towards where we are reaching today, which is the celebration of 75 years of independence. Industry has always been at the forefront of development, whether for the nation, whether for its people, and towards that, for building a better future for us. And digitization, as we know, is not only a current and future need, but a very critical part of how evolution across social, economic, cultural, and business spheres is happening. Because the digital world does not believe in differences. It doesn't believe in inequality. It believes in transparency, and it believes in a society that is rid of inequalities and that is at a level playing field for all. Even more important, hence, is how do we get our large informal sectors into this digital world? And as Chandrajit mentioned initially, the India at 75 Foundation runs the functional literacy program, which works exactly towards this end. It consists of a series of modules that teaches the informal sector how to navigate this digital world and how to use it to improve their own lives, their own businesses. Today, there are multiple service platforms across sectors like healthcare, finance or financial services, and education. And so many of us are experiencing them every day. We know that a set of digital protocols called the India Digital Stack, promulgated by our government over a decade ago, has changed the game to how India uses the digital medium to better the lives of its people. Payments. I'm sure more than half of this auditorium uses some payment tool on their phone, whether you're shopping, whether you're buying a movie ticket, whether you're ordering for food in the evening. 10 years ago, it didn't exist. It was a cash world. And one open protocol called UPI has completely changed this, creating the largest payment ecosystem, open free payment ecosystem, the most efficient, cost-effective one in the world in less than a decade, less than 5 years, I would say. And as we use these different digital mediums, there is also a very important balance between data privacy and data access. And data access for the delivery of basic services to all that needs to be thought through. A number of other initiatives, again to help, for example, MSMEs, the GSTN network, Ocean, the credit enhancement network, or the National Digital Health Missions, are various initiatives taken in collaboration between the government and the private sector to see how to make our lives better, how to make services more cost-effective, how to make them available in real time. It gives us also an opportunity to, as we think through the next 25 years and not necessarily waiting for that period of time, how many of these services which are now innovated in India can be taken outside of India, regionally and globally, because they are relevant not only for India, but for the world. We no longer need to be a follower of innovations made in the West. We have an equal opportunity going forward to take innovations made in India to the West and the rest of the world. We have hence seen significant examples in recent years of government, private sector, and society leveraging digital means. And we're very happy to have the Minister with us today to hear from him. Though while we were talking before coming here, he says, I want to hear more from you meaning all of you, but to hear more from him as to what's the next steps in this digital world that we can hope to take as we get ready for India at 2047. Thank you.
Thanks, Sanjeev. Honorable Minister, we thought that we can get some comments from you before we hand over to Janmay to moderate a discussion session with you. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, my pleasure and honor to invite and request the Honorable Minister, Shri Ashwini Vaishnav, the Minister for Railways, Communication, Electronics, Information Technology.
Mr. Sanjeev Bajaj, President Designate of CII, Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, Director General of CII, Mr. Sinha, Mr. Navani, Mr. Rangaswamy, all the captains of industry and other participants from government, I wish you all a very good afternoon. I'm sure after the excellent session you had with Ms. Lekhi, this will be slightly different. So I thought I'll not, in fact I requested Mr. Banerjee that I don't want to make a speech, rather have more of an interactive session so that I can understand from you what your thought process is and use that in further policy making. But one has to make a smallish kind of initial comment, so I'll make that small initial comments. Okay, so I'll be covering 5 points very briefly. As we look at India at 75 and getting ready for India at 100, this is the period which will be called the Amrit Kal in history of India. And what is Amrit Kal? Amrit is 75 years. From 75 to 100, this period of 25 years will be a golden period for the country, golden period for the generations to come. It will be a period which will see huge growth, inclusive growth, a society which is built upon trust, a society which is caring for the people who are at the lowest rung of the society, people at the bottom of the pyramid, people who have been marginalized, people who have earlier been treated as a vote bank. All those distortions which have happened in the country is what we aim to set right in this Amrit Kal. Now, from the perspective of industry and especially from the perspective of digital landscape, I'll just make very quick 5 points. First is electronics and other manufacturing. Second is about lead in semiconductors. Third is about the use of public platforms. Fourth is about the digitization of large industrial sectors which are there. And fifth is about the convergence between the way digital industry will work, which is basically the convergence between telecom and IT. So these are the 5 brief points. Electronics manufacturing, all of you know that 7 years back, 10 years back, it was a minuscule industry. India was not even kind of considered on the radar in the world. Today, we have a significant electronics manufacturing industry, close to $80 billion today, employing close to about 25 lakh people. It's a significant employment, and this is good quality employment. There are plants where you would find 60% of the employees are women employees. So that's a great gender equalizing opportunity. So and there are other plants where you'll find disabled people actually leading a large number of departments. So that's the kind of inclusive growth which has got initiated by the electronics manufacturing industry. It's well on its way to grow to 300 billion in the coming 5 years. We have got lots and lots of inputs from the industry on what else can be done by the government to make sure that it grows faster than this. And we are in the process of implementing many of those suggestions, and of course always open to having more ideas, having more suggestions on this front. The second is about semiconductors. This entire sector, the sector of semiconductors, is going to be the foundation stone for n number of industries in the coming years. Whether it is the telecom industry, whether it is the IT hardware industry, whether you talk of automobile getting totally transformed by use of more and more chips, more and more electronics. You take any sector, whether the steel sector, whether the heavy machinery sector, every sector is going to use it. So how do we leverage our talent and build up the semiconductor industry in our country, and how do we scale it up in a consistent manner over next 10-15 years so that it becomes a major force in the growth of other industries. That's going to be a major aim, and we have taken some very good initiatives in the last and the initiatives are showing good result. Each and every CEO that I have spoken to, each and every global major that has come and met us, have put India squarely on the radar, have started identifying real opportunities, have started scouting for talent to lead those initiatives, and the way there would be certain more things to be done, but the way this sector will pick up, and of course this is right timing also, given the geopolitical environment that we face, this will become a major driver for many other industries. So that's the second point. And third point is about the public platforms. I'm sure all of you know about UPI, I don't need to repeat it. The concept is basically, it's a very different way of having a PPP, where the government is now planning to create public digital platforms on the lines of UPI, on the lines of CoWIN. Such digital platforms will then be opened up to the startup community, to the industry. Please come, create your consumer-facing applications, grow with us. We provide you the solid base, and for that we have formulated a national data framework. That data framework, based on the feedback that we have received, should be uploaded in a short, within a week's time frame, 10 days time frame. Using that kind of framework where non-personal data can be used for providing better services, and we put that in a public digital platform, then you as industry and startups come up and provide the consumer-facing, customer-facing applications. That is another great classic win-win. UPI is a good example. The another example is DigiLocker. I'm sure the insurance, how many of you are from insurance industry here? Mr. Bajaj would of course be there. So today practically every insurance company is using DigiLocker for its KYC and some other certification processes. So that kind of, now DigiLocker is a public platform. Do we go straight to the public for that? No. Other industry participants, they come and use this platform and create applications which are going to be used by their customers and the entire ecosystem for creating that value. So that was the third. And fourth is about digitization of large industrial sectors. Sectors like the railway sector, sectors like defense, sectors like steel sector. These are the sectors where digitization needs to happen at a much faster pace compared to what has happened in the past. And that's where we will be taking more proactive steps in involving the industry in digitization of these sectors. So the defense sector you have seen, there is a great template for the startup community to come, join the defense sector, be a participant in a challenge initially, and if the challenge leads to a good result, then use that result to create a business case for you. So that kind of support will be provided in many more sectors, including railways, in the coming, in the near future. So that will be the fourth way by which the entire IT, electronics, digital, all these worlds will be creating value for you. And the final is the convergence between 4G, 5G and digital world. So basically all of us know today that the primary mode of consuming internet and the primary mode of consuming digital services today is the mobile phone. So how do we accelerate this transition? How do we make this transition safe? How do we face the challenges of cyber security? How do we make sure that the services remain affordable the way they have remained affordable despite the huge capital investment which has to be made in providing these services? So these are the challenges that we have to come out, we as industry and government and society and the lawmakers, all of us have to work together to come up with solutions for that. So these are the 5 themes I thought would be relevant for this session. And again, the overarching pyramid for all of this will be that everything that we do must definitely aim to provide benefits, provide a transformative force, create an acceleration, create a better environment for the people at the bottom of the pyramid. Because our political philosophy in this government, Prime Minister Modi ji's political philosophy is Antyodaya. And Antyodaya primarily means that people at the bottom of the pyramid, people who have been marginalized, people who have been cut off from the stream of development which has happened over the last many decades, they are the people who have to be put at the core of our development programs. And digitization, digital world, that's a primary driver of growth, and that's the primary driver of development today. So we have to put that section at the core of our digitization also. So with this, I'll stop here from the initial remarks and be open for questions and comments from your side. I'll come there.
Minister, thank you so much for your clear and, as always, clean speech. You know, it always helps us focus our minds as we have this discussion. And as part of this India at 100, we are now going to different formats and having different audiences which are a cross-section of India, rather than just a simple national council kind of discussion, so that the messages that we are wanting to spread and the policies that we are pushing forward are understood more broadly and challenged more broadly by a greater cross-section. So what we will do is to have a conversation with you first from the panel, and then we will also invite questions from the audience, which is a mixed group of SMEs, of consultants, of some people who are from the NGO sector, but all of whom are interested in digital platforms and the opportunity that it might provide. So that's the context, and I wanted to begin by first just highlighting that a lot of people are now saying, despite all the challenges, that India finds itself in a sweet spot. It finds itself in a sweet spot because of a combination of three things that have not happened before in the same in the same extent. The first is, while there's an acute shortage of tech talent in India today, because all of us are struggling, it just suggests how much tech activity there is happening in India, that we are having a weekly unicorn at some points. And despite the tightening of capital with inflation fears, the flow of capital to India, because of the changing indices, where India's position versus China, Russia, Turkey, South Africa and Brazil is so much stronger, that allocation is going to grow. So despite interest rate movements, etc., we do not anticipate that we will be tight of funds. Within this context, the first question I wanted to just get your open thoughts on is, which are the platforms that India should compete in, and which are the platforms that India should own? And I must confess a little bit of sadness that you missed out on our tech stack in financial services, which Google has written to the US government to say that the US should copy from India. So, you know, both in terms of account aggregators and the lenders, OSIN network, which is coming about. But the first question is, given this favorable shift, which platforms should we be competing for? You can see that now the Tatas, Reliance are all trying to talk about a super app. We are also having a, Byju's and all going into EdTech. We are also creating the framework and the format of a health stack. So where do you see it? What do you see are the areas we should be competing in, and which are the areas we should own?
That's a very good question. Now, I would like to address this question from a perspective of the what is our competitive strength? Something which happens at $10 in some other economies can actually happen at 0.5, less than $1 in our economy. And the fundamental drivers of this kind of economics is the large volume that we get, the huge volume that we get, and the strength of the forward-looking strength of our tech talent. That gives us an advantage which creates solutions which are not only better on quality but also better on cost. So any sector which requires huge scalability, any sector where the per unit cost is very important factor in determining success. So for example, healthcare services, for example, fintech you rightly mentioned, for example, consumer facing services, for example, education sector. So these are the sectors where India provides initially a very large base to test, to develop and prove a solution, and then that solution can then be taken over to the world. For example, education technology. Today, every education successful app in the country is finding global audience, global markets. Take the example of fintech. The example of Aadhaar, the use of UPI with it, and the use of something like DigiLocker with it, is today being studied by none less than the US Fed. And they believe that this is a structure, because it's an open source structure, because it has a public element, this structure can be replicated in many more economies. And we are almost on the verge of signing MOUs and NDAs with about 5 or 6 major economies in the world for replicating something similar. So these are the sectors in which we should definitely own, we should lead, we should invest, and you very rightly pointed out, because the way our economic management has been recognized today in the world, almost all the global indices, the weightage for India is increasing. As we were discussing, MSCI is going to increase the weightage. So that means a lot more fund flow will happen automatically. So with that as the global environment and our strength, I think there can be many winning sectors.
Sanjeev, would you have a question for the Minister?
Yeah. Mr. Minister, you just talked about some of the innovations that India is capable of driving because of our large volume and ability to deliver low unit cost, not just requirement, but ability to deliver. The flip side of this also is that there's so much innovation happening around the world. So, the whole narrative over the last 1 year about crypto, should India allow it, ban it, regulate it. There are many, metaverse. Some of us don't even know. We have to learn from our kids, what is this metaverse? Just about we are surviving in the real verse. So some of them may be less real, some of them may be more real, but there's a whole bunch of emerging technologies that's happening where what would be useful would be is that if there is a cell that's created or a group that's created of smart minds from the government, from private sector, from society that can identify some of these emerging technologies and create a perspective for the government to say, in India, this is what we will do for it. So that we are not stumbling over it each time it develops. So it's a separate question from developing our own innovations, that's separate. What are your views on creating something like this, and do you think it can be created in your ministry?
I think that's a fabulous suggestion. And yes, we have been interacting with the industry on many of these emerging technologies. But I think it would be useful to create a more structured form. So I think would CII like to take a lead in this?
Yes, as CII, then we'll come to you with some kind of a structure to make this work.
May involve other groups like NASSCOM. NASSCOM should be part of this, and we can have maybe some hardware manufacturers also in this, because these things are today so interlinked, and have telecom sector also as part of it. So maybe have an interdisciplinary kind of group, and that group can then be tasked with, okay, which are the 10 emerging technologies which we must start putting dollars today, so that we are not disadvantaged in terms of where the growth is going to be. That's a fabulous.
I must say, Sanjeev, that just before this session, the minister was telling me, I think it would be one of the very few ministers anywhere in the world who was saying, I want some round tables which are only going to tell me what more I can do, where there is room for improvement. I mean, I have come across many ministers, but never have they actually sought punishment like this. But we will definitely offer it to you, Minister. Ranga, now from a Silicon Valley perspective, we'll have a question.
Thank you, CB and Rajan and CII for having me here. Honorable Minister, good to be here from the diaspora. I've lived in Silicon Valley for 40 years, and so bringing a different perspective on platforms. You know, there are many different platforms which are owned by Silicon Valley. The search platform, social media platform, there's so many others that have been owned. So I think India needs to stake out its own platform. And I think it needs to be a mixture of multiple platforms, an interoperable platform, if you will, which includes citizenship services, health services, payment services, education services, and the like. So it's got to be interoperable, and it has to be multiple layers, and also a 5G stack that comes below it, because we got to connect everyone. And with the diaspora's help, there are 300,000 of us who live in Silicon Valley who are Indians, right? So use our help in that regard. But also the diaspora is very influential across the world. There are 30 million people in the diaspora who live in many different countries, and there are, you know, CEOs of companies, 60 CEOs in the Fortune 500 are Indian, the 200 politicians of Indian origin, 20,000 academics in the US. So use this diaspora to go take this platform to the world, right? So if you mix this platform, put cloud all over it, and then you take it to different countries and offer it as a goodwill gesture to countries, I think that will be the biggest thing that India can do with the diaspora's help and for the world in the next 25 years.
Absolutely right, absolutely right. And we as a society are greatly, it's a sense of not just pride, it's a sense of ownership also, that if an Indian origin person becomes the CEO of a global giant, the pride that we get, that's phenomenal. And that gives hope and aspiration to millions more across the country that yes, we are among the best, and getting that environment, how much more can we do? So if there is one learning that I would like to take away from your comment is that how can we create more and more conditions, more and more how can we create an environment in which not only the Indian diaspora feels compelled to work together as a, yes, the environment is right, let me go out and give some of my time and effort to this, building the platforms as you very rightly said and putting a cloud around it. But it also brings in more investment into the country, creates more goodwill for the country all across the world. And in fact, very recently, I wouldn't take the name of that geography, large geography, they said that you have a great advantage because of the Indian diaspora in another large geography. How can we create a similar Indian diaspora in our geography? So that's the power of our Indian diaspora. I'm glad that you pointed this out. Let's do whatever best we can do on this.
Chandrajit?
Janmai, what I'll do is I will not ask a question to the Honorable Minister, because I do get an opportunity once in a while to, I'd rather like to get some people to ask questions to Rahul. There are a few names which has come up, so one should give some preference to those who have really requested for in advance. Dilip, I'd like you to come up. Rahul Vats of Bharti Airtel, and Comfirst, the founder and director of Comfirst, Mahesh Uppal. So, Dilip, yeah, please start off.
Only
so
easy
much.
questions, please.
Very easy.
And three of you together, short
All right.
ones. because-
Sure. Very quick. Thank you so much, Minister, and thank you, CB, for giving this opportunity. Quick question. I was very impressed with the 5 pointers that you had, which you spoke about. You spoke about digitization of large industrial sectors. I want to know what your thoughts are, because so much of Indian manufacturing lies in MSME sectors, right? And they're the ones who really need to be handheld and taken through this transformation. So is that a priority, and where does it?
Absolutely. So each of these large industrial sectors has, if you ask me, let's say railway sector. Now railway sector, close to 80% of the railway sector is in MSME sector, right? And if even behind every large company, there is a whole network of MSMEs who are their tier 1 suppliers, tier 2 suppliers, tier 3 suppliers. So that's the way the industry is structured. And when we talk of digitizing these sectors, we are talking of the entire sector, not just the large industry. And everything begins from some point, moves on to the next level, the next level, the next level. Because at the front level, which is the interfacing level, at the bigger companies, the cost can be managed. But the moment we move on to, let's say, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, then the costs become very significant. So almost everywhere, the global experience has been that we start with the front facing, the larger industry, move on to the next, which are large vendors, then move on to the next, which are smaller vendors, and then move on to the next, which is the micro vendors. So that's the way it should happen in our country also.
Well said. The power of the ecosystem. Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Rahul.
Thank you, JB. Honorable Minister, first let me thank you for the tremendous amount of energy and zeal you have shown in tackling this issues of this very critical ministry in the telecoms. So you are aware that the telecom connectivity is the foundation, for the digital India, and also entrepreneurship startups which are happening. Sir, my simple question to you today is, and you talked about what more do you want to do, but I want to go reverse and ask you, what role do you see for us, and what more should we do as operators, to in next 5 to 10 years in this Amrit Kal period? Also, how do we enable the journey for the 5 trillion US economy which the Prime Minister has envisioned? And one last question is about what more can we expect in the Reform 2.0? The 1.0 has really given a booster shot for the entire sector, so we're hoping for more.
First question first. What you can do?
Yes.
If you can reach out to those 60,000 villages, which are still not so well covered, and about 20,000, 25,000 odd villages, which are not covered with digital services, I'll be the happiest man.
Absolutely, sir.
Reach those villages, far-flung villages in the forests of Odisha, forests of Jharkhand, forests of Chhattisgarh, forests of Andhra. Those are the places, the tribal communities, the communities which are really not connected. Because why I'm saying this, there is no hesitation in saying that every day of digital divide, every passing day with which the gap between digital haves and digital have-nots, if we don't fill this gap today, then it will become too difficult to be filled up tomorrow. So that's where we as the government, you as the industry, we have to make sure that we pull out every barrier, we break every barrier, put every resource at our command, and reach out to those communities which are left out, and make sure that they get at least if not equal, at least a significantly comparable service to what we get in Delhi and Mumbai and Chennai and Bangalore. Otherwise, we would not be doing justice to our society. From our side, you have seen so far, we will be doing much more. This is not the forum in which I can say what we are doing, but I'm sure we will make sure that the telecom industry, which is a primary source for consuming digital services, and which is a driver of the digital services and the driver of digitization, especially for MSME sector, because it has to be cheap, it has to be low cost, it has to be reliable at a low cost point. We will be doing to make sure that it becomes a good, vibrant, it stays a good, vibrant industry. It becomes a sunrise industry, not an industry which is struggling, not an industry which is continuously fighting with the various stakeholders, whether they are the courts or the government or the regulator, but rather working all of us together to reach out to that last person in this society.
Thank you so much.
Honorable Minister, this is Aubrey Aloysius.
This will have to be the last question, though.
Sure.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so, sorry, may I? My name is Aubrey Aloysius. I am in the music edutech industry. And I must say I'm so privileged to actually observe what has been happening here. Thank you for the 5 points that you shared. I have been, during COVID, which has been a time of blessing in disguise for especially a company like us, I have been reaching out to the US for technology. And I have been reaching out to Silicon Valley. In fact, my chief mentor in the Silicon Valley is one Mr. Raj Jaswa, an Indian origin person, who has done not one but 2 IPOs in NASDAQ. Raj Jaswa is known to Mr. MR. And we've been targeting the Indian diaspora who are helping Indians here who are hungry for technology, for example, and for growth. Now, I think just to share, and I'd love to be involved with the ministry in terms of what we can do for the rest of the nation, for people like us. We, as a startup, have been taken into an accelerator in Silicon Valley, which is begun by the IIT. It's the IIT startups, and just 18 of us, and we're in that US, accelerator.
Can you ask your question, please?
The question
We're
here
running
is,
out of
how
time.
can we be proactive with the ministry in seeing the scale up? I'm just giving you one example. How can we see the scale up? Because there is a hunger for technology from the US, from Silicon Valley, which we can bring into India and have a global,
One way in which you can really help, and the Silicon Valley can really help, is by becoming mentor to the startups that we have in the country. See, the startups today are not looking for funding from anybody. They know that, yes, they can find funds. What are they looking for? First and foremost thing that the startups today seek is people whom they can call up, seek their guidance on any doubt they have in their mind. Second, people who they can call up and seek comments and connects with somebody else. In your network in the Silicon Valley, if you can provide that network to our Indian startups, I think that would be the biggest service you can do to the land from which you originated.
Just briefly, we have an organization called In Diaspora, which I founded 10 years ago. We can be that conduit to really get people like that together.
Thank you, Minister. It's always, as always, been, I can assure you, this is the most open minister you can come across. We will have many such sessions, and he will be willing to take more punishment with all the questions that we have. So trust me, he has no problems in doing that. I can speak on his behalf in saying this. As always, your clarity was just helpful for us as we conceive and move forward. As you have kindly agreed, we are going to take you up to create the round tables where we will find ways to engage with you. The 5 points that you laid out were very clear, and I really like the aspiration in India now that we don't take givens as givens, that we will go after semiconductors because there is a need to do that. So I really thank you for sparing the time to come and talk with us in such an open manner. It's been great for all of us. And on behalf of this initiative towards India at 75, thank you for making the time.
Maybe we now request Mr. Sanjeev Bajaj to please present memento to the Honorable Minister. Sir, Honorable Minister, sir. Sir, come. Sir, we have a memento, sir. Just 1 minute, please. We are requesting Mr. Sanjeev Bajaj to kindly hand over. Thank you so much, and thank you. May I request everyone to please remain seated? We are starting our next session immediately. We already have Mr. Shri Anurag Thakur here with us, Honorable Minister of Information and Broadcasting, Youth Affairs and Sports. Kindly be seated. We are starting immediately, please, right away. So kindly take your seats.